Hello, everybody. This is Dan Eisenberg again on Scale App Podcasts. This is, believe it or not, episode number 26. So we've really developed a lot of content. And as you know already, I do Scale App Podcasts. This is a serious hobby for me. And it's free for you. And for me, what's important is that we develop together a common understanding of the mystery. Let's call it the mystery of growth, but I think we demystify it in a lot of ways. And so we've had guests who have broken at least $5 million, some of them up to $500 million, and from many different countries, from many different industries, and from, with many different strategies. Well, today I'm really excited to have as a guest Jerry Jendusa, whom I've known for, 12 years or so. And I met him in the context of a project that we launched called Scale Up Milwaukee, which was actually the first scale-up economic development project in the world. And the rest, well, we'll get into it. Jerry, just say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody. And Dan, it's so great to reconnect with you. And you look as spry and as young as ever. And so I'm excited to have this discussion with you.
So Jerry's an unusual guest, maybe unique so far, in that he wears several different hats. And so we're going to get into the phenomenon, let's call it that, not mystery, the phenomenon of how you grow companies from a few different angles. So Jerry's been there, done that with a company called EMTEQ, and I learned from that as well. That was quite a relatively long time ago, when he was quote unquote young. And he's also been investing in companies to help them grow. He coaches companies. He promotes as kind of a series of give back activities in Wisconsin. I didn't mention that he is in Wisconsin, based around the Milwaukee area primarily. And so with that, we'll plunge in. But Jerry, I'm going to maybe throw you a little bit of a curveball. I do this with all my guests, and it's a punishment for not listening to my podcasts. and that is, first of all, tell us who Jerry Jendusa is, but don't say anything about your businesses.
So I am a husband of one. I'm a father of 5. And I'm an outdoor enthusiast, love to hike, love to fish, love to hunt, love to spend time with my family. I think in watching them grow, we've got 5 young adults now, and they're all getting to different levels of their professional careers. Love to work with kids, love the whole concept of getting people to develop the confidence to do things that they otherwise wouldn't feel that they could do. And so there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of purposeful things that we do. And going back to, I love Milwaukee. You talked about Wisconsin, this ecosystem. When we first talked with Milwaukee and Scale Up Milwaukee, we were saying, yeah, this is a city of about 600,000, 700,000 people. We have academia, we've got local government, we have small business, we have mid-sized business, we have large business. How do we work around an ecosystem? And so that was what really intrigued me, and even to go and get trained by you at Babson College. But so to me, I love life, I love people, I love Wisconsin, I love sports. The Brewers are playing right now in the playoffs. The Dodgers are kicking their butts. Last night they lost again, but we beat the Cubs, and that was a big deal.
How are the Bucks doing?
The Bucks haven't started yet, but Giannis Antetokounmpo, anytime a team has a Giannis on it, we have hope.
That's great. It's wonderful. So let's actually start with Milwaukee, or Southeast Wisconsin. Let's talk about that a little bit. And how has that evolved as a good place to grow a company? And what are some of the things it's gotten right? And what are the things that you think it could do better on? Let's just spend a few minutes on that.
Just a couple of quick minutes there. I could go on for a long time. I think there's an awareness in Wisconsin, and that Milwaukee is a great manufacturing spot. The Midwest is a great place where there's a lot of solid universities. And there's a beautiful connection between Milwaukee to Madison, Wisconsin. Politically, we have to be careful as to what side we're on, because if we're all about growth, we can work together to create jobs. And so I'm going to leave that at that.
But let me just say that Wisconsin, for those of you who don't know, it's a very politically, even before the current polarization at a national level, it was very politically divided in somewhat in the extremes as well, which I think that's what you're referring to.
I am. And so our business is in Waukesha County. Waukesha County is very conservative. Milwaukee County is not as conservative. And then Madison isn't as conservative. And so, but Waukesha County is right between those two. And so there's too much of that, a little too much fighting that goes on for the better good of growth.
So you think that's something that you sort of put aside in order to focus on the economic growth, or you're saying that focusing on growth allows you to find some common ground?
Focusing on growth allows you to find common ground, especially when you're looking at innovating, you're looking at disrupting, you're looking at building something that can last for a longer period of time.
You know, I was really impressed in a lot of things impressed me in the Milwaukee area that are not that well known outside of Milwaukee. And I think that's a strength and a weakness, is that there's kind of a humility in a way, a modesty, let's call it, in that we don't do things just to show off. That's my impression anyway. It's sort of the Midwest of the Midwest. And
Yes.
and there are also a lot of real big companies. There's a huge legacy there, the GE Healthcare and the Johnson & Johnson and a lot of other companies. You referred to manufacturing. It's not only manufacturing. There's very large insurance companies.
Oh my
If
God.
you stretch over into Madison, we've got EMTEQ, which is not really well known where it comes from, but many of us, when you go into my chart for our healthcare, it's EMTEQ. And that's a
Epic.
multi-billion-dollar.
Madison.
Yeah. No venture capital, as far as I know. Very quiet, very humble, but there.
There's not much venture capital at all. There's a lot of growth that people would be really surprised by. There are a lot of people from Illinois that move over the state lines to Wisconsin because of a taxation advantage. And so you think of Racine and you think of Kenosha. Kenosha is so close to Illinois in that border. But there's a lot of the Johnson family, Johnson Controls, in that Racine area. And then you even have like manufacturer Usingers, and just there's an amazing array. Alan Bradley, also the Water Council of the World. People don't know that. So you worked a lot with Scale Up Milwaukee, and UWM was involved, and there's this whole water research with this beautiful body of water called Lake Michigan.
And
So
that's attracting world partnerships and
World partnerships.
and so there's a lot of activity, let's say somewhat under the radar, certainly doesn't have the glitz or the self-promotion of, let's say, Silicon Valley or even Austin for that matter.
Badger Meter's another one. So you dealt with some
Palermo.
Yeah.
So, by the way, thanks for correcting me subtly. Johnson Controls, not Johnson & Johnson. Thanks.
That's okay.
A real manufacturer.
There's even some of the biosciences, the biohealth. There's funding around that. And then you get University of Wisconsin-Madison, which is phenomenal when it comes with what they have with their research foundation to help accelerate growth. There's an entrepreneur of the year, the same year that I won it in 2014. His name is Kevin Conroy. And he's doing, his companies went public, and it's right in Madison. I can't think of the name right now, but just a great, great guy.
So it's a real example of what I've always referred to as an ecosystem, what I in a way kind of made famous by identifying it entrepreneurship ecosystems. And I think that's really evolved. I can say that our project was part of that. I don't think we created it. I don't think we retarded it either, but I think we helped accelerate that a little bit by, again, identifying the potential. And let's not forget human capital, I think.
Human capital.
That's related to the universities and the good people moving in from outside. So that's the macro, and it's interesting to think about that. And in that macro, let's start with EMTEQ. Way back when, 30 years ago. Is that right?
Close to 30, 96 it started, yeah.
That's 30 years ago, Jerry. It's coming right up on us. So just tell us just briefly about the EMTEQ story, because you've told it so many times, but I want to get the basic facts out there so we can talk a little bit about what we learned from that in terms of
Yeah,
growth and challenges to that growth.
just quickly with that story, it started in 96. It was built in a basement, limited funding, family friend only, so no venture capital, no private equity, line of credit, $120,000 of our own cash, and is an aerospace company. So a lot of difficulty for barriers to entry, all the things that you could think of within aerospace. But that grew into an international business from a basement. I was a 27-year-old kid who didn't know a lot about a lot, had a great business partner who knew more of the operations. I was more of the dominant personality, more of the push. He was more of the process guy. So,
and you made a subsystem of lighting in
subsystem lighting, cabin electronics, integration, wire bundles, regulatory. Everything we did on airplanes, besides for like major power and heavy major avionics and wing tips and fuselages, we were saying, hey, it's a small industry. There's a lot of barriers to market entry. So we turned that into, a $250 million in enterprise value over 18 years. And when we exited, we had 660 valued employees in 4 different countries.
Jerry, I can only imagine that if you tried to pitch this to venture capitalists then or even today, you'd get doors slammed in your face.
Totally. I didn't have the right pedigree. I wasn't an aerospace engineer. I was a UWM grad. I probably was a 3.0 student, if that. One of those types.
Selling into long sales cycle, hard to get approved as a supplier.
You're never going to get it done. You're never going to pass all the stuff that you. But when you hear that as a builder, that's kind of like you got to put a little chip on your shoulder, and that's what drives you or motivates you to prove people wrong. And
so looking back, and again, you've told this story so many times. What are the two things that about how to grow a company to 100 billion revenues, $250 million value, let's say, how to grow a company? What are the two things that you really nailed, and what are the two things that you really screwed up on and had to fix?
I'm going to say the two things. I'm going to say them both for what we nailed and what we screwed up on. People and process.
Say, okay,
people
more. Yeah.
And process. I mean, at the end of the day, if you think about it, we didn't do that as well as we should have, and then we started getting better and better at it, to the point where I wanted to fire every employee to then appreciate that everybody has their own human gifts, right? Or a process to share a vision and to accelerate growth through others. So people and process aligned with strategy and how you execute is so critical.
Well, you need the people and process to execute. You can't execute without.
But the people are the ones that create the process. So the people trump the process, but then you really need the process and the habits and the daily grind and the tied to your strategy and your values and your vision and your mission and your strategic initiatives. You got to put that whole process and operating system around the people to help accelerate the growth through those people.
So I can say from just my own perspective, and I'm interested in hearing what you think, that there's another P that most entrepreneurs overemphasize, and the two P's, people and process, underemphasize.
Profit.
Well, no, I wish they would focus more on profit. It's product. You get a good product and it'll sell itself, right?
Yeah.
And they say, well, people, having HR and policies and so on.
Yeah.
We'll get there. And having processes, well, that's a little boring. We're entrepreneurs, right? We're innovative and we're flexible, and we'll get there. And I think the experienced entrepreneurs like yourself say, you know what? If I had to do it over again, I'd start much more with the process and the people.
Yeah, and then to your point, the product, though, where getting a tangible product that a customer wants, it's very, very critical. Like when we first talked to him, like, I'm pretty fascinated by this guy because he's saying it the right way and he's being real candid about it, where people are looking to raise capital, and it's like, no, we're looking to raise customers, and we're raising customers up because we're listening to a customer. And a lot of times you'll get marketing, and marketing will say, yeah, the voice of the customer, and I get all that, but we really want to get into a customer's value stream. We want to get into their mind. We want to get into their habits. We want to get into their pain points. And then we want to provide a product or a service for them. We don't want to do that in a room where there's nobody around. We want to do that in the nuts and the bolts of that company to say, how can we make that company better?
So one of the things I hear some of our guests say is that customers don't buy technology, they buy solutions to their problems. And I'm just curious whether did you discover exactly what the value your customers wanted? And were there any surprises in that?
And there's always surprises. And as you learn and you listen, it's like, I have a pain point and I'm in the aerospace industry, or I have a pain point and I'm developing a drug.
Well, give an example from EMTEQ. I can only imagine that the companies weren't saying, you know what, I need an LED lighting who can supply that for me. So what problem of theirs were you solving?
Good question. Way to tee it up for me, because I need that help a lot. So I have a problem in my aircraft that's vibrating and my bulbs are shattering.
Yeah.
I have a problem with my avionics interference where I have a startup voltage of 4,000 volts. I have a problem where my aircraft is too heavy. I have a problem because I want to get my maximized range of my aircraft to compete against my competitor so I can charge more money for my private or corporate aircraft or my valued travelers that I'm flying commercially around.
So is that something that when you were just starting out, you had to discover that you didn't understand, or did you feel like you understood that, the pain points?
Well, it's interesting because as an entrepreneur, sometimes you don't have enough data. And I think that's perfectly okay. So there was a guy who has since passed away. His name is Larry Masters, and he worked for Gulfstream. And I was working for a different business, and they didn't want to solve this problem. And he said, if you ever can find a way to replace fluorescent tubes in aircraft, you should do it. I'm like, oh, why? And then you get into the 5 whys. By the time you get to the 3rd or 4th why, like, you've nailed it. Like, why do you want to replace fluorescent tubes? I want to place fluorescent tubes because they cause interference. Why do they cause interference? They cause interference because they start up at a very high voltage. Why do they start at that high voltage? Because they're a cold cathode tube that needs that. And oh, by the way, when they have that large voltage, there's arcing, or there could be a flame that happens in an aircraft. There could be a fire. Oh, why is having a fire bad in an aircraft? Well, duh. So it's one of those.
Right.
Okay, so then now there's an opportunity, and I didn't know anything about lighting, but I was opportunistic. So
would you say listening is one of your strengths?
It has to be. I mean, I would say, because I'm not very bright, I can't come up with the ideas on my own, so I have to listen to others.
Parentheses, Midwestern modesty.
But then as you listen, you can't just listen to one person, because that one person might not be as great. So then you kind of maybe a little discovery, a little vetting. You're listening to multiple people. You're trying to find a systemic problem. And then you're having the right mindset of every problem is an unforeseen opportunity. So if you put those pieces together, you're like, oh, that person has the same problem. Oh, that person talked about fire hazard. That person talked about crosstalk with avionics. That person talked about fluorescent tubes. That person talked about cold cathogen, bulbs, halogen bulbs. Oh, okay. But they didn't give me a solution. They just gave me their problems.
That must be gold, right?
That's golden.
Yeah.
So let's come up with a solution for those problems. Oh, there's some ideas around laser technology. Oh, there's ideas around doing something where you're illuminating a light down a light pipe. Oh, there's this technology with LEDs at the time that only was doing like instrument displays. Well, what if we did LEDs, and then, light bulb goes off, but then it takes a lot. It's not just you come up with one product and now, we're going to make millions.
So let's fast forward a little bit to some of your activities today. You exited, and then we're leaping forward quite a few years.
Yeah.
To some of your activities today. We're investing in coaching, observing other companies. I'm not going to say in the same situation, but companies that are trying to grow. And tell us a little bit, just what is this Breakthru group? What do you do? What are some of the investments or projects that you've been involved in? And then we'll go from there.
So we, from a philanthropic standpoint, we met because I was helping scale up Milwaukee, volunteering my time, forming builders groups. But we had developed some tools around operating systems. So if you're a builder and you're a first-time builder, you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to scale and you're a $4 million company, how are you going to scale it to 50 million? How are you going to scale it to a mid-cap?
Well, that's the question.
That's the question. So it's people, process, profits, strategy, operating systems, vision, mission, values, all the things that you can think of. But then you have to have the right habits and the right mindset and the consistency and the transparency and the to really, and I didn't feel there was anything out of the box that really worked. There's a couple things out there you look and right, but there wasn't like something that was like just keeping it real. Like, how do we keep it real? And then as we're doing it, we're forming builder tables. So we're forming these round tables where people can share ideas very similar to what you do.
I see. So these are not startups necessarily. Right?
Not startups, only scale.
And
only ones.
What does that mean in your terms?
So in my terms, scaling is whatever you want it to be. So if you're a $2.5 million company, you want to get to 10. You got to change some things to get to 10. You're a $10 million company, you want to get to 50. You got to change some things to get from 10 to 20 to 50. You're a $50 million company and you want to become more of a large cap. And you want to grow to 100 million or 250 million, you got to consistently, so building or scaling is just that. It's growth. It's growth every year. When we talked about entrepreneurship with you and I facilitated a discussion, our definition of entrepreneurialism was growth. That was it. It was just growth.
Yep.
Nothing else.
If it doesn't grow, it doesn't do anybody any good.
If you're not growing, you're dying. And being a capitalist is a good thing. And so you always have to reinvent yourself every year.
So you have, in a way, a playbook.
Yeah, playbook.
It has a bunch of tools in it that companies who want to make this leap of 5 times or 10 times bigger, they can use.
But an interesting thing, Dan, is so then you get to my age and you get to your age and you're like, okay, well, I'm not done yet. And I can only help third-party clients so much. But I'm going to buy, like, since we last talked, we bought 3 companies. And we're going to do a thesis around regulatory in the FDA and in the USDA. And we're going to get involved in drug therapeutics and automation equipment for the cell and gene therapy market. And then we're going to do it from the animal side to the human side. But I'm going to hire a protege to be the CEO because I've been there and I've done that as a CEO for 18 years without knowing what the heck I was doing. But now we're going to have these tools.
And you basically inculcate or implant these tools.
Yes.
Both through bringing in people and, of course, your presence as well.
Yes.
And teaching it in a way and driving it into the organization.
Into the culture.
Right.
Into the inner fabric of the organization.
Yeah. Do you ever, well, I guess if you're in control, that is in ownership, it's a little bit simpler because you can basically say, this is what we're going to do.
Yes.
Could you give an example of how this has actually worked in one of your companies and what the results have been?
Yeah, so an example will be Zyogenics, also known as BioCut Systems. So we bought a business. It was about a $3 million company. It was a tool and die shop. Tool and die shop. We bought it because they had one customer, and the customer's name is AbbVie today. At the time, it was LifeCell, and they were cutting biologics. Like, this is cool. This is interesting. So then you go in and you say, what is our vision? What's our mission? What are our values? Let's do an organizational clarity blitz on this. Who are these employees? Who can we hire that can actually help us build it? We went through one leader because it didn't fully work. We brought in a different. Made a mistake. Always make mistakes. Brought in another builder. Her name is Rachel Barr, and through her, with her, developing the team around this to say, okay, we're going to gradually get rid of certain customers. We're totally a biosciences company. We're not going to do anything else.
So part of the problem was on the strategy side.
Strategy.
We're too diffuse and not focused enough.
I would be as bold as to say, and the person who owned it, great guy, he's deceased now. He had a little bit of a vision, and he had a little bit of a drug problem for himself. So there were some personal things going on, and he developed a pretty good team. He had a sales guy, John Reimer, who was phenomenal, who really helped push it to a certain level. And now we're trying to take it to the next level, and we're going to. But now we're into tissue banking, and we're into cell and gene therapy. We went from one machine to multiple automation machines. We're into consumables, disposables, preventative maintenance. With a vision, we put a clean room in.
What's the unifying element of that vision? Because there's a lot of different things. What's the...
when you think of it, a unifying vision to me goes back to, like, what is your vision statement? And we're maximizing the gift of life. And then our mission underneath that gets into what are we doing, how are we doing it, and who are we doing it for? And then that can easily get everybody around who we hire, who we develop, who we train, what systems we put in place around this concept of we're a global provider of automation equipment for biologics. And now you're like, oh, okay, so we're involved with skin. We're involved with bone. This sounds kind of gross. We're involved with blood. We're involved with the cells and genes that are in your blood. Mm-hmm. Now we have definition. And when you have definition, now we're going to solve problems to build something and grow something. So, you have a $3.5 million company, you get rid of $2 million of business, and then you grow it to 10 million. And that's what we're doing right now. But we're going to go from 10 million to 50 million.
I think that it's sort of a retreat in order to advance, but it's not really a retreat. I often think that the most stressful experiences that a business owner / entrepreneur has is firing your partner or someone who's been a long time. That's stress number one. Stress number two is when you're on the verge of bankruptcy.
Yep.
Stress three is raising your prices, but stress four, and maybe it's number three, is getting rid of some customers.
Yes.
And the very first guest on Scale Up podcast was Mitch Slotnick from the Cleveland area, and he said they took off when they fired Amazon. They just stopped working with Amazon because it was a great name, very glitzy, a lot of revenues, but they killed us on margin, and they were killing our business.
Imagine that. So, then it gets into leadership. You got to be bold. Like, who in their right mind is going to fire customers? like you can see firing an employee, right? And that's hard too, like a shareholder, a
Partner.
builder, you're having to exit or soft land a customer or a key employee, or maybe even a key supplier. So you have to be bold in what you do, and then you have to be kind of convicted to it. Like you have to be like a little crazy, a little maybe unconventional, because you're doing things to beat the stock market.
Is that one of the things that you help people do? Because you're bringing in leadership, right? And you're on the board or maybe active chairperson, but
I'm the active
bringing in
chair for
leadership.
3 businesses, and then I'm an advisor for all these other
Okay, so you're not the
companies. Yeah.
CEO. You're not the CEO, and I'm asking is one of the things that you do is guide the CEO through some of these really painful decisions.
Yes. That's it. And then it's quarterly review, quarterly reset, monthly check-in or checkup. So it's all part of a cadence. It's all part of like standardized work to scale.
Why do you think, sorry for interrupting, why do you think that's so hard for entrepreneurs? This processes and systems, and they don't like it, and B, they don't recognize
You're
who they.
you're asking this question with knowing the answer before you ask the question, but that's what makes this a good show, right? Because an entrepreneur like me, I'm chasing shiny objects. I'm chasing, where's the squirrel? Like, oh, here's the next great idea. Oh, here's the next great idea. So what makes you a successful startup, what makes you a successful entrepreneur doesn't necessarily make you a successful builder or a successful CEO or a successful president. So you kind of you're going to have to say, hey, I'm going to stay true to who I am and what my skill set or what my passion is. And maybe I'm going to bring on a president who can do that better than me. And I'm going to eat a little bit of humble pie. And I'm going to say, I have gifts, and these are my gifts. Like them or not, this is who I am. So we get into, you got to keep it real. Like, what are you good at? You're not good at everything. My partner to this day in business, and my wife Becky, I always tease about this because she's really my partner, right? But his name is Jim Harasha, and it's like Felix and Oscar. He's an ops guy.
Okay.
I'm a pusher. I'm a builder. People might call me so many different names. They might call me a knucklehead. They might call me whatever. But a lot of times it's a trailblazer. It's a pioneer. If you want to be fancy, you'll say it's a visionary or all the other bullshit.
So how do you keep from that from splitting apart? How do you keep the enough glue for you to benefit from these completely different perspectives and skill sets?
First it comes to understanding. You have to understand. So what makes Dan Eisenberg tick? What makes Jerry Jendusa tick is what's different than makes Jim Harasha tick. And then you need all of those members of the team. So it's like playing Monopoly, or it's building a puzzle, and you're putting these unique human beings that all have our own DNA into the puzzle, but you're maximizing their talent, and you're saying, this is really good that we think differently. Like this is like, we're going to clash. Like we're not going to get along all the time, but we're going to have fun. We're going to have fun fighting a little bit. We're going to have fun. And then when we disagree, we move on.
It's interesting that it really reminds me of our company, which I had in Israel for 15 years, called Triangle Technologies. And I was the CEO, but I had two partners. I was an American Israeli, another one was an Israeli Israeli, and the third was a Japanese Israeli. And we were completely different from each other. We fought. I mean, if you could have listened from the outside, you say this company is absolutely falling apart. But there were a few things that kept us together. And one is mutual respect. Second was radical honesty with each other.
Yeah.
But also we shared values. What really kept us together was the fact that we shared the value of what a customer is and
Yes.
how we're going to address that customer need. And that's uncompromising. We never compromise on that. So in the end of the day, I was a CEO, but really a lot of the decisions were consensus. And that's what kept us together, the shared values.
Shared fate. And we always start our exercises with companies that we own or don't own. It starts with a values exercise.
Interesting.
And we have to stay accountable to those. And then there's some intolerables around those values.
What do you mean, for example?
So an intolerable, if you have a customer focused, a heightened customer awareness as a critical value of listening to a client, if you have people that don't listen to clients or don't care to do that,
It's out.
they got to go. It's like they're gone, because if we're fixated on a customer experience, and some people don't care about that, or we have other values where we're saying, you know what, we do like a little bit of fun in the workplace. Like, we want to be joyful. We want to have fun because life is too short, right?
I can imagine. Yeah, I'm trying to think in my own mind how that might play out. I can think of one example for you that being a team player or being a star performer. So I could see one value that's incontrovertible is I build my success on the backs of others would be the starter, for example.
Yes, I love that. I love that. So those values become really important. And it's just like a professional sports team, or it's like anything else. Because those are a lot of cultural pieces that go away from the innovation and the products and the science or the aerospace electronics or all the complicated stuff. That's like it's almost like the soft stuff.
Let's talk a little bit about money. You're not a venture capitalist, but you do invest. You didn't really raise any money in EMTEQ from venture capitalists, as I understood it. What is the role of equity capital versus, let's say, debt capital or
I love it.
or customer capital?
I love it.
What is okay? Say more.
So to me, the first thing that I would say is equity is way more expensive than debt. I'm going to say that again. Equity is way more expensive than debt. So the more that you can leverage that valued relationship with a banker, the more that you can share what you're doing, the more you can get a line of credit, and it's equity, not equity, it's debt. And maybe you're leveraging a little bit of your equity. Maybe you're having to take out a personal guarantee and then eventually you get rid of that. But if we can leverage debt, we can grow the equity and we can be a little greedy for our own equity. So then it gets into happiness is positive cash flow, and cash is king. So if you grow too fast, sometimes you could run out of cash. So you got
to manage the cash.
You have to maximize the value of the cash.
Okay. So you're involved in the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. You've been donated generously to the Lubar Center of Entrepreneurship, etc. Do you think that those very practical things are we teaching those to business school entrepreneur wannabes?
Well, it's not as much as we should. So I'll give you examples for the biosciences space. Everything in this actually, when we first connected, we were both thinking alike on this. I'm doing a capital raise. I'm doing another capital raise. I'm doing an A raise. I'm doing a B raise. I'm doing a C raise. I'm doing a venture this, venture
Unicorn.
that.
I'm a unicorn.
Oh my God. It's like, well, wait a minute. I tell you what, I'm going to grow a business and I'm going to grow it to $250 million, and I'm going to be majority owner of the business versus I'm going to be a part of a $2 billion company where I own 1% or 2%. And then, but I get control, and I hate to use this word because I believe in giving up control to getting control in the long run when it comes to your valued staff. So I do believe in empowerment, but when it comes to having like control, if we have majority ownership in a business, or if I have a partner, Jim Harasha, and we both own 40% of it, so we have 80% ownership, guess what? Our 80% is going to trump your 20%. So if we do get into a disagreement and we're not recovering from this disagreement, we have bylaws and we have covenants and we have all that, the same way that a bank has covenants. I mean, when we did Scale at Milwaukee and realizing the amount of companies that were successful, you're $5 million companies, and you're like, do you have any bank financing? Nope. I pay cash for everything. Like, are you serious?
My mother told me never to have debts.
We had a company that wanted to buy one of our businesses. And he's like, and it's a family run business, third generation, $84 million company in revenue. I mean, a good, maybe even a little bit more. Run rates at $8 million a month. We pay cash for everything. You're never going to be able to buy our business. If our business is valued at $7 million, you're going to just pay cash for it? Why wouldn't you take out a little bit of a note with the bank in long-term debt where it's a 60-40 split, an 80-20 split, a 50-50 split? Leverage your debt. Those bankers are there not just for when the sun's out. Those bankers are there when it's dark and cloudy too.
Jerry, I'd love to put you in front of my colleagues who write books about how important it is to give up ownership in order to raise enough money in order to build something of significance. And you're saying the exact opposite.
We raise money with family and friends where we don't need the money to get them to have skin in the games. Key employees, hey, buy a little of this. But if you grow something and it turns into 200 million and you own 1% of it, we're going to make you a millionaire. And there's not that, I mean, there's more and more millionaires in this world, but there's not that many of them.
Yep. Well, Jerry, I promised my listeners to keep this relatively short, but I want to ask one last question before we end. You mentioned you have, is it 5 children?
All right, kids.
5 kids. Yeah,
5 children, young adults. Young adults.
Young adults. Thank you. Thank you. They might be listening. And if one or two of them got to the right age and came to you and said, Dad, I really want to start a business. And based on your own experience, there's a little like a question of, what would you tell your younger self now that you know what you know? What would you tell them? 2 or 3?
Well, now the situation is a little different. So the situation is we have a family office and we actually do multifamily office services. If you have some level of equity funding where you can get debt, buy a business versus starting one up.
That would be one piece of advice you'd give.
One piece of advice.
Okay, interesting.
And if you do start it up, you're going to have to pitch it to me. And it has to make sense. And if it doesn't fully make sense, but you have the passion around it, like, do it. Go for it. And do it with a chip on your shoulders to prove smart guys like me wrong. Because sometimes the younger you are, the more naive you are, the more potential success you can have. Because my younger version of myself, when I started at 27, my oldest son Nathan's turning 27 next week. I didn't know any better. If I would have known better, I probably wouldn't have started it up because it would have been dumb, right? But that dumb business created a quarter of $1 billion of wealth. So you have to be careful about any idea that just putting a label on it saying that's a bad idea. Because if you're convicted, you got passion, you figure it out along the way, you can make a lot of stuff happen.
It's interesting. I think some of our listeners know this, but a lot probably don't. I wrote a book 12 years ago, the title of which was Worthless, Impossible, and Stupid. And the underlying thesis is it's complicated. It's a complicated thesis, but the underlying thesis is that a lot of the valuable ventures that were built when they were started looked worthless, impossible, or stupid.
Exactly.
Well,
we started a business out of a basement. And the first thing, because we're going to do a business. It was called aerospace wire and cable or some damn thing. And it was such a bad idea, we had to shoot it out. But then there's we got this other idea. And it's about lighting. It's not our idea. It was from Larry Masters. God rest his soul, he passed away. But
that's a customer.
That's a customer. It was a customer that we listened to. And then we're but we have to cash flow it. So what else are we going to do to cash flow this business? Then the thesis is we're going to save weight on aircraft. Let's come up with some other products that can save weight on aircraft that are going to disrupt this industry because there's all these mill standards around a certain product, that we came up with a better one that met the standard, that saved them a lot of money and a lot of weight. So then it was all around saving weight and money, but then you got a cash flow to grow. Business is hard. I mean, business is really, really hard.
Yep, it is.
But that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it fun.
That are valuable. Maybe most things that are valuable have an element of difficulty or challenge to them. Well, we've got to come to an end now, and Jerry, maybe we'll have to have you back sometime for part 2. But again, this is Jerry Jendusa. Thank you so much for joining us and all the hundreds, maybe thousands of listeners out there.
It was good to hear your voice again, Dan.
So everybody, this is Dan Eisenberg signing off from Scale App Podcasts. This is a serious hobby. If you like it, share it. Share it with your friends. My goal is to have an impact on the world exactly like by bringing guests who have been there, done that, such as Jerry, and who bring this refreshing, real-life view to something that some of us like to mystify and make glitzy and but he makes it real, and so many of our guests have done that. So, again, Dan Eisenberg signing off from the Scale App Podcasts, and we'll hear you soon. Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks, Dan.